Ethan Caldwell had everything money could buy. Luxury cars that gleamed like polished jewels in his private garage, a sprawling mansion with marble floors and golden chandeliers, and a reputation as one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the city. Yet for all his riches, his heart carried an emptiness he couldn't quite explain. His wife, Clarissa, was often away at charity galas, fashion trips, or socialite parties. Their marriage, once warm, had grown cold, reduced to polite conversations and public appearances. The only constant presence in the house was Maria, the quiet maid who had been working for the Caldwells for nearly 5 years. She was efficient, respectful, and kept mostly to herself. Ethan rarely noticed her beyond the duties she performed, tidying his study, serving meals, or keeping the house in pristine condition. To him, she was part of the background, someone who existed to make life easier but not someone to pay much attention to. That was until one spring morning. Ethan was returning home earlier than usual after a tense meeting at his company headquarters. He parked his sleek black Bentley in the driveway and walked into the house, loosening his tie. The hall was unusually quiet. Normally, the faint hum of a vacuum or the soft clinking of dishes in the kitchen would greet him, but that day there was only silence. Curious, Ethan wandered through the hallways until he heard faint humming coming from the garden. He followed the sound and froze at the sight before him. There, sitting on a bench under the cherry blossom tree, was Maria. But she was not alone. In her arms was a baby boy, no more than a year old, with eyes startlingly familiar, icy blue, the exact shade of Ethan's own. For a moment, Ethan's world tilted. He blinked, convinced his imagination was playing tricks. But the resemblance was undeniable. The strong jawline, the dimple on the left cheek that appeared when the boy gurgled, even the fine strands of golden brown hair. The child looked like a miniature version of himself. Maria, Ethan's voice cracked slightly, a mix of disbelief and shock. Maria startled, her humming halting instantly. She clutched the baby protectively, her eyes wide with fear. Mr. Caldwell, I didn't hear you come in. Ethan's gaze never left the child. His chest tightened with questions he couldn't form fast enough. Whose baby is that? Maria hesitated, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the courage. She lowered her eyes, refusing to meet his piercing stare. Answer me, Ethan demanded, his tone sharper now, though confusion and desperation lingered beneath. A tear slid down Maria's cheek. He's mine, she whispered. Something inside Ethan twisted. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. Yours. Don't lie to me, Maria. That boy, he gestured toward the child, whose bright blue eyes were fixed on him curiously. He looks exactly like me. Maria's silence was louder than any confession. Ethan staggered back, his mind racing. Memories came flooding in, nights of loneliness when Clarissa was gone, the quiet comfort Maria had unknowingly provided, and one night in particular 2 years ago. A night when Ethan had been drowning in whiskey, his marriage crumbling, and Maria had found him in the library. She had tried to comfort him, and in his broken state, lines had blurred. Neither of them had spoken about it since, as though burying the memory could erase it. Now the truth stood before him, in the form of a living, breathing child. My God, Ethan muttered, running a hand through his hair. He's my son, isn't he? Maria's tears flowed freely now. She rocked the boy gently as if shielding him from the storm brewing in the air. Yes, she finally admitted in a shaky whisper. He's your son. The words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. His heart thundered, torn between rage, disbelief, and a strange, overwhelming surge of emotion he hadn't expected, something close to joy. He had always wanted a child, an heir, someone to carry his name. Clarissa had never shown interest in starting a family, brushing off the idea every time he mentioned it. Yet here, fate had handed him a son in the most unexpected way. But the scandal, the betrayal, the chaos this revelation could cause, it all crowded his mind. If the world knew, his empire, his reputation, even his marriage would shatter. He took a deep breath, his voice low but steady. Why didn't you tell me? Maria shook her head, her sobs quiet but raw. I was afraid. You're a millionaire, and I'm just your maid. What future could there be for my son if anyone knew? I thought it was better this way, hidden, quiet, safe. Ethan stared at her, then at the boy. The baby reached out a tiny hand toward him, as if instinctively recognizing his father. Ethan's throat tightened. Against his will, he extended his hand, letting the boy's small fingers wrap around his own. A strange warmth spread through him, An anchor, a bond he didn't know he craved until that moment. Clarissa's voice suddenly echoed from inside the house. Ethan, are you home? Maria gasped, panic flashing in her eyes. She quickly stood, clutching the baby tighter. Ethan's mind raced. He had only seconds to decide: hide the truth, confront Clarissa, or take a step into a future that could change everything. And in that split second, he knew that whatever choice he made, nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan's heart pounded as Clarissa's heels clicked across the marble floors. Maria's face had gone pale, her arms tightening around the baby as though preparing to be torn apart. Quick, Ethan whispered urgently, his mind racing. Take him inside the guest room, now. Don't say a word until I decide what to do. Maria hesitated but obeyed, slipping quietly into the side corridor just before Clarissa entered the garden. She was stunning, as always, draped in a designer dress, diamonds glittering at her ears. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Ethan's tense expression. You're home early, she remarked, arching a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Something wrong at the office? Ethan forced a calm smile, though inside he was reeling. No, I just needed some air. Clarissa studied him for a moment, then shrugged. Well, don't look so grim. I've been invited to a charity ball tonight. I'll need you on my arm, of course. He clenched his jaw. Clarissa's life revolved around appearances, glamour, and status. She had never once asked him about his dreams, his emptiness, or his longing for a family. And now, hidden in the next room, was the very thing he'd always wanted, his son. That night, Ethan accompanied Clarissa to the ball, but his mind was elsewhere. Surrounded by laughter and champagne, he kept seeing Maria's tear-streaked face, the baby's tiny fingers gripping his hand. By the time they returned home past midnight, his decision was made. The next morning, he summoned Maria to his study. She entered nervously, the child in her arms. Ethan closed the door and gestured for her to sit. We can't hide this forever, he said quietly. He's my son. I won't let him grow up in the shadows. Maria shook her head in panic. Mr. Caldwell, please, if Mrs. Clarissa finds out, she'll throw me out on the streets. She might even hurt him. You know what she's capable of. Ethan's expression hardened. Then let her. She's already destroyed what little was left of our marriage. But this boy, he is mine. I will not deny him. The baby giggled, tugging at Ethan's sleeve as if sealing the pact. Ethan reached out, gently lifting him into his arms. Holding the boy felt both strange and natural, like a missing piece of himself had finally been found. What's his name? He asked softly. Daniel, Maria whispered, her eyes shimmering. Daniel Caldwell. The sound of his surname with the boy's name struck Ethan like thunder. His son, his blood, his heir. For the first time in years, Ethan felt alive. But reality pressed in quickly. Clarissa wasn't blind, and secrets never stayed buried long in the Caldwell mansion. 2 days later, his fears came true. Clarissa stormed into his study, her face twisted with fury, holding one of Daniel's small blankets in her hand. What is this? She hissed, slamming it on his desk. Don't tell me it belongs to one of your business associates. That child, I saw him. He looks exactly like you. Ethan rose from his chair, his voice calm but resolute. Yes, Clarissa, he's mine. Her face went white. For once, words failed her. She staggered back, gripping the edge of the desk. You, with her, with the maid. Ethan didn't flinch. 2 years ago, when you were off in Paris for 3 months, I was broken. Maria was there. And from that night came something you never gave me, an heir, a son. Clarissa's eyes blazed with venom. Do you have any idea what this will do to us? To me, the humiliation. People will whisper that I couldn't even give you a child while your maid could. I won't stand for this. Ethan stepped closer, his tone sharp as steel. This isn't about you, Clarissa. It's about Daniel. He is innocent, and he deserves everything I can give him. If you cannot accept that, then perhaps you should rethink your place in this family. The threat was clear. Clarissa, used to controlling every social narrative, now found herself cornered. Her lips trembled, but her pride wouldn't let her show weakness. If you dare parade that bastard as your heir, I'll make sure the entire city knows what kind of man you really are. Do what you must, Ethan said firmly. But know this, I will protect Daniel at any cost. For the next week, the mansion became a battlefield of silence. Clarissa refused to even look at Maria or the child, while Ethan spent every spare moment with his son. He found himself laughing again, playing peek-a-boo, feeding Daniel from a bottle, marveling at how quickly the boy was learning to walk. Servants whispered in the corridors, rumors spread beyond the estate, and soon the newspapers caught wind of a scandal brewing in the Caldwell household. One evening, as Ethan tucked Daniel into a crib he had ordered for his private quarters, Maria approached him with tears in her eyes. "You're risking everything for us," she said softly. "Your empire, your reputation, even your marriage." "Why?" Ethan looked at her, then at the sleeping child. His voice was firm but filled with quiet conviction. "Because for once in my life, I've found something worth more than money. My son. And I won't let anyone take him from me." But the storm was only beginning. Powerful enemies were watching, hungry for the Caldwell scandal to erupt. And Clarissa, humiliated and furious, was already plotting her revenge. The storm that followed was unlike anything Ethan had ever faced in business. Within days, gossip columns screamed headlines about the Caldwell scandal. Millionaire's secret son with Maid splashed across magazines, and paparazzi camped outside the mansion gates, eager to capture a glimpse of Maria and Daniel. Clarissa fanned the flames. Furious at being humiliated, she gave interviews cloaked in bitterness, painting Ethan as a careless man who had destroyed their perfect marriage. Behind closed doors, she threatened to drag Maria through court, take Daniel away, and claim a fortune in divorce settlements. Maria grew more terrified each day. She wanted to disappear, to take Daniel and run far away, but Ethan would not allow it. "If you leave," he told her, his voice steady, "they'll spin the story that you kidnapped my son. Stay. Let me fight this." One night, as the mansion lay quiet, Ethan found Clarissa waiting for him in the library. A half-empty glass of wine trembled in her hand, her eyes wild. "You've ruined me, Ethan," she hissed. "Do you know the shame I've endured? Do you know what they whisper when I walk into a room?" Ethan's patience had thinned. "Clarissa, we were ruined long before this. Our marriage was a facade. And now I won't pretend anymore." Her lips curled. "You think you can parade that child around as your heir? I'll destroy you in court. I'll strip you of everything." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but commanding. "You'll try, but I have something more powerful than your lawyers, your connections, or your vanity. I have the truth, and the will to fight for my son." The words silenced her. For the first time, Clarissa saw the fire in Ethan's eyes, a fire that no business rival had ever managed to ignite. She realized she could not break him, not this time. Days later, Ethan made his boldest move yet. At a press conference in front of flashing cameras and journalists eager for blood, he stepped to the podium with Maria by his side and Daniel in her arms. "Good afternoon," Ethan began, his voice clear and steady. "Rumors have swirled around my family in recent weeks. Today, I will not deny them. This child, Daniel Caldwell, is my son. I am proud of him. I will raise him, love him, and protect him with everything I have." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan continued, unflinching. "Yes, his mother is Maria, a woman who has worked faithfully in my home for years. That does not make Daniel any less my son, or any less deserving of my name. If the world sees this as scandal, so be it. To me, it is not scandal, it is salvation. I have been blessed with a son, and I will not be ashamed of him." The cameras clicked furiously, reporters shouted questions, but Ethan lifted Daniel high for the world to see. The boy laughed, his innocent joy cutting through the noise like sunlight piercing clouds. The reaction was explosive. Some condemned him, calling him reckless, immoral, a disgrace to high society. But many more saw something different, a man willing to stand against convention for the love of his child. Public opinion began to shift, and whispers of respect rose among those who once sneered. Clarissa, watching from afar, realized the tide had turned. Her threats no longer held weight. If she fought Ethan in court, she would only look like the bitter wife trying to tear apart a family. In the end, she packed her designer bags and left quietly, her pride in tatters. Back at the mansion, life slowly found a new rhythm. Ethan spent mornings in the garden with Daniel, teaching him to crawl across the grass, and evenings reading him bedtime stories. The once cold, lifeless house now echoed with laughter and baby giggles. Maria, though hesitant at first, grew into her role beside Ethan, not as a maid, but as the mother of his child. Ethan respected her strength, her sacrifices, and the quiet dignity with which she had carried the secret for so long. In her, he found not only the mother of his son but a companion who had stood by him when no one else did. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of orange and gold, Ethan sat with Daniel in his lap. Maria stood nearby, watching them with a soft smile. "Do you regret it?" She asked quietly. Telling the world. Ethan shook his head, his gaze fixed on his son. Not for a second. For years I chased wealth, power, and respect. But none of it filled the emptiness inside me. Daniel did. He's my legacy, my reason, my proof that life is more than gold and glass towers. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. You gave me the greatest gift, Maria. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure neither of you ever suffer again. In that moment, the weight of scandal, the gossip of society, even the loss of Clarissa, all of it faded into insignificance. What remained was simple, unshakable truth. A father, his son, and the woman who had given him the family he never thought he'd have. And as the evening breeze rustled through the trees, Ethan Caldwell finally understood what it meant to be truly rich.